The blaring alarm jerked Frank Foster from sleep, his hand slapping the snooze button with practiced precision. The red numbers on his bedside clock read 5 o'clock a.m., an ungodly hour by human standards, but exactly when he needed to wake for his first day as a teaching assistant at Galactic University. Frank had been the only human selected for the prestigious interspecies exchange program, and he wasn't about to be late. "Coffee," he mumbled, shuffling to the small kitchen in his assigned apartment. The accommodations were comfortable but noticeably designed for beings of various shapes and sizes, the countertops adjustable, the doorways wider than necessary, and strange controls labeled in multiple languages. After 6 months of intensive preparation on Earth, Frank was as ready as he'd ever be to face a classroom full of alien students. The bitter taste of caffeine helped clear his mind as he reviewed his schedule. First up, comparative xenobiology, where he would assist Professor Zelorn, a respected 8-limbed scholar from Proxima Centauri. Frank had been warned that the 3-hour lab session would be physically demanding by human standards, but the university administrators had assured him the activities were within human physiological capabilities. Frank's commute to the university took only 15 minutes via the automated shuttle system. As he stepped onto the campus grounds, the sheer scale of Galactic University hit him anew. Sprawling crystalline buildings stretched toward a purple sky, connected by transparent tubes where beings of all descriptions moved with purpose. The gravity was slightly less than Earth standard, a small mercy for his Earth-born muscles. "Mr. Foster, you have arrived at an appropriate time." "Excellent." The voice belonged to Tren, a slender, greenish being who served as the exchange program coordinator. 2 sets of eyes blinked at different rates as Tren approached, datapad in one of 4 hands. "Good morning, Tren." "I'm ready for my first day," Frank replied, straightening his university-issued tunic. "We have 17 students enrolled in today's session. All have been briefed on human biological parameters, but I must caution you, many have never interacted with your species before." Tren's translator rendered their clicks and whistles into perfect English. "Remember, you represent not only yourself but your entire species." "No pressure," Frank muttered. "Pressure? Ah, your Earth humor. The atmospheric pressure has been calibrated to comfort ranges for all species present." Tren guided Frank through a series of hallways toward the xenobiology lab. Professor Zelorn was already arranging specimens when they arrived. The professor resembled a cross between an octopus and a praying mantis, with iridescent exoskeleton and eyes that rotated independently. "Human Foster." "Welcome. Today we examine locomotion across oxygen-breathing species. You will demonstrate human bipedal movement under various conditions." The professor's voice was surprisingly melodic despite coming from what looked like mandibles. Frank nodded, suddenly feeling like a specimen himself. "Happy to help, Professor." The lab filled quickly with students of diverse morphologies. Some floated, others slithered. A few moved on multiple legs, and one appeared to teleport in short bursts. They regarded Frank with varying degrees of curiosity, apprehension, and excitement. "Class," Professor Zelorn announced, "today we welcome Teaching Assistant Foster, a human from Earth. We are fortunate to have a representative of this species to assist in our comparative studies." A ripple of communication, some audible, some through color changes, some via subtle electromagnetic pulses, moved through the room. Frank recognized it as the alien equivalent of whispers and stares. "I'll need a volunteer to help calibrate our monitoring equipment," Professor Zelorn continued. "Grek, perhaps you," a stocky, rocky-skinned student with 4 powerful legs stepped forward. "It would be an honor, Professor." The next hour consisted of Frank and Greg being fitted with various sensors to monitor respiration, muscle activity, and energy expenditure. Then came the practical demonstrations. "We will begin with basic locomotion at various speeds," Professor Zelorn explained. "First walking, then what humans call jogging, and finally running. Greg will demonstrate Petrosian movement alongside for comparison." What followed was essentially a treadmill test, but on a device that could accommodate any life form. Frank started at a walk, his vitals displayed on massive screens for the entire class to analyze. Greg moved beside him, his stone-like legs making heavy thuds. "Note the efficiency ratio," Professor Zelorn pointed out to the class. "Human Foster maintains acceptable oxygen consumption at this speed. Greg, being a Petrosian, uses significantly less energy due to their silicon-based musculature." As the speed increased to a jog, Frank maintained his composure easily enough. He was reasonably fit, having trained for this program. Beside him, Greg seemed barely affected. "Now we will observe maximum sustainable speed," the professor announced, and the treadmill accelerated. Frank broke into a run, his breathing becoming more labored. Sweat began to form on his brow, something that caused murmurs among the students, many of whom had never seen human perspiration. "Fascinating," exclaimed a jellyfish-like student floating nearby. "The human secretes liquid to facilitate cooling. It's called sweat," Frank managed between breaths. "Perfectly normal." After 5 minutes at full speed, Professor Zelorn finally allowed them to stop. Frank was winded but recovered quickly, wiping his face with a towel. "Next, we will test endurance and strength," the professor announced. "Human Foster will demonstrate lifting capabilities while we measure muscle stress." The class moved to another section of the lab where various apparatus were set up. Frank was directed to lift increasingly heavy objects while sensors monitored his muscle strain. "Humans have evolved as persistence predators," Professor Zelorn explained to the class. "They lack the immediate strength of many species but possess remarkable stamina when properly conditioned." As the weights increased, Frank began to struggle. The alien students watched with intense fascination, some taking notes, others recording with devices. "Enough," Professor Zelorn finally said after Frank had lifted a weight that left him red-faced and shaking. "We must preserve our specimen." "I'm fine," Frank insisted, though his arms felt like jelly. The final test involved climbing a vertical wall with various handholds, something Frank had not specifically trained for. Halfway up, his forearms burning with lactic acid, he nearly slipped. "Human Foster exhibits signs of muscular fatigue," Professor Zelorn noted clinically. "This is consistent with the documented limitations of their species." Frank gritted his teeth and continued climbing until he reached the top. The class made various sounds and gestures that his translator interpreted as approval or surprise. When he finally descended, several students approached him with questions. "Do all humans possess your endurance parameters?" asked a student with tentacles. "No, I'm about average," Frank admitted, still catching his breath. "Some are much stronger or faster. Yet you show no signs of imminent collapse despite elevated respiration and heart rate," observed another student with metallic skin. "Our research indicated humans have limited physical reserves." A third student, resembling a tall insect with compound eyes, leaned forward. "We expected you would require immediate rest. Is there a gymnasium facility nearby where you can recover?" Frank laughed, which startled several students. "I'm tired, sure, but not about to collapse. Humans can push themselves pretty hard when needed." "Intriguing," the insectoid student replied. "Our understanding of human physiology may require revision. Professor Zelorn intervened. This demonstrates the importance of direct observation rather than relying solely on literature. Human Foster has shown typical endurance for his species, which exceeds some theoretical models. The class continued with more demonstrations, each pushing Frank's stamina a little further. By the end of the 3-hour session, he was genuinely exhausted, his muscles trembling slightly from exertion. As the students filed out, Professor Zelorn approached. "You performed admirably, Human Foster. The students gained valuable insights." "Thanks, Professor. Happy to help." Frank tried not to show how tired he really was. "I notice your glucose levels have dropped considerably. You should replenish your energy stores promptly." The professor extended a container with what looked like blue gel. "This is compatible with human biochemistry and will help restore your glycogen reserves." Frank accepted it gratefully, consuming the strange but not unpleasant substance. Almost immediately, he felt his energy returning. "That's amazing. What is it?" "A standard energy supplement for carbon-based life forms. Your cafeteria should stock it." Professor Zelorn's eyes rotated in what Frank had learned was a gesture of approval. "Rest now. Tomorrow's session involves respiratory efficiency tests." After leaving the lab, Frank headed to the faculty lounge where he collapsed into a specially designed chair that accommodated his human frame. He checked his schedule, still 3 more classes to assist with today. "You appear functionally depleted," observed a voice nearby. Frank turned to see a crystalline being refracting light in patterns his translator interpreted as concern. "Just a bit tired. First day and all." "I am Professor Nixil, Quantum Physics. You are the Human Exchange Instructor." "Teaching assistant, yes, Frank Foster." The crystalline being shifted, creating a rainbow effect. "I observed your xenobiology session remotely. Most educational. We had a human lecturer 3 cycles ago, but she departed after experiencing what your species terms burnout." "Burnout?" Frank frowned. "Nobody mentioned that." "Terran physiology is poorly adapted to our standard academic schedule," Nixil explained. "Your predecessor attempted to maintain pace with non-human faculty and suffered physical collapse in her 3rd month." Frank felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room temperature. "How many classes did she teach?" "She assisted with 7 daily sessions and conducted independent research." "7," Frank exclaimed. "I'm scheduled for 4, and that already seems intense." "The administration has apparently adjusted expectations for human endurance." Nixil's light patterns shifted again. "A wise modification. Your species is fascinating but fragile by galactic standards." Before Frank could respond, his communication device chimed with a message from Tren. "Meeting with Dean Vorex in 10 minutes. Location: Administrative Tower, Level 12. Frank groaned internally but rose from his chair. "Got to run. Nice meeting you, Professor." "Run being figurative in this instance, I presume," Nixil replied. "Your literal running capacity appears temporarily diminished." "Figure of speech," Frank confirmed with a tired smile. The administrative tower loomed over the campus, its transparent surfaces revealing the complex internal structure like a massive ant farm, populated by beings from across the galaxy. Frank took a gravity lift to level 12, where he was promptly ushered into an office that seemed to shift and reconfigure itself continuously. Dean Vorex existed as a cloud of luminescent particles that cohered into a roughly humanoid shape when Frank entered. "Teaching Assistant Foster. Your initial performance reviews are satisfactory." "Thank you, Dean Vorex. I'm trying my best to represent Earth well." The particle cloud swirled. "I have received 17 inquiries from students regarding human physiology following your demonstration." This indicates successful knowledge transfer. Frank nodded, unsure how to respond to the dean's clinical assessment. However, the dean continued, our monitoring systems indicate you are operating at 73% of optimal human capacity. This is below acceptable parameters for sustained performance. I'm just a little tired from the demonstrations, Frank assured the dean. I'll be fine after some rest and food. The particle cloud condensed slightly. Your predecessor made similar assertions before requiring emergency medical evacuation. We have adjusted your schedule to prevent similar outcomes, but you must communicate physiological distress signals promptly. I will, Frank promised, wondering exactly what had happened to the previous human teaching assistant. Excellent. You are assigned to dormitory complex C, correct? I will authorize installation of human-specific recovery equipment. Recovery equipment? What your species terms exercise facilities. Our research indicates regular physical activity paradoxically enhances human stamina rather than depleting it. A puzzling evolutionary adaptation. Frank couldn't help but smile. It does help, yes. Then it shall be arranged. Your next class begins in 20 minutes. Nutrition packets compatible with human digestion have been delivered to your office. Dismissed, Frank hurried to his office, a small but functional space near the xenobiology department. As promised, several packages labeled Human Nutritional Supplement, all essential amino acids and carbohydrates, awaited him. They resembled energy bars but tasted surprisingly like chicken soup. Somewhat refreshed, Frank headed to his next assignment, cultural communications, where he would help students understand human non-verbal cues. The class was smaller but no less diverse than the xenobiology lab. Today, we discuss human facial expressions, announced Professor Kelp, a being who resembled a sentient fern with eyes embedded in its fronds. Teaching assistant Foster will demonstrate the primary emotional displays. For the next hour, Frank smiled, frowned, showed surprise, anger, disgust, and confusion while the students attempted to identify each expression. Some species found it incredibly difficult, having no facial features themselves, while others proved surprisingly adept. Humans rely heavily on these micro-movements for communication, Professor Kelp explained, fronds waving gently. What might seem obvious to species with similar physiognomy is incomprehensible to others. A student resembling a geometric arrangement of transparent cubes raised what might have been a limb. Query: why do humans leak fluid from optical sensors during emotional distress? Crying, you mean, Frank clarified. It's a physiological response to strong emotions, not just sadness. We can cry from happiness too. This prompted an outburst of questions, and Frank found himself explaining concepts like lump in the throat and butterflies in the stomach to increasingly bewildered alien students. By the time his third-class comparative planetary adaptation rolled around, Frank was flagging. This session required him to demonstrate how humans adapted to different gravity conditions, atmospheric compositions, and temperature ranges, all within the university's environmental simulation chamber. Human Foster will now experience conditions equivalent to those on Rigel 7, announced Professor Zult, a cloud of gas contained within a mechanical exoskeleton. Note the increased strain on respiratory function. As the gravity increased to 1.3 times Earth normal and the oxygen percentage dropped, Frank felt like he was trying to breathe underwater while wearing a backpack full of rocks. He managed the required tasks, walking, lifting objects, performing basic calculations, but each became progressively more difficult. Remarkable adaptation, Professor Zult commented as the chamber returned to standard conditions. Most species would show significantly greater impairment under equivalent stress. Frank merely nodded, too winded to speak immediately. A student with eyes on stalks approached him. Your respiration rate exceeded 160% of baseline. Are you experiencing system failure? Just out of breath, Frank managed. I'll be fine in a minute. The student conferred with several classmates before turning back to Frank. We expected collapse at that exertion level. Is there a gymnasium facility where you can conduct repairs? Frank couldn't help laughing despite his fatigue. I don't need repairs, and going to a gym would mean more exercise, not less. This seemed to confuse the students further. Human physiology is contradictory, one observed. They strengthen by stressing systems to near failure points. By the time his final class ended a mercifully lecture-based session on Earth history, where he only had to answer questions, Frank was thoroughly exhausted. He dragged himself back to his apartment, muscles aching and head pounding from the strain of processing alien concepts all day. He collapsed onto his bed without even removing his shoes, only to be startled by his communication device chirping insistently. It was Tren. Human Foster. Emergency faculty meeting in 30 minutes. Attendance mandatory. Frank groaned. Can't it wait until tomorrow? I'm completely wiped out. There was a pause as Tren's translator processed the idiom. Ah, you are experiencing energy depletion. Unfortunately, the meeting concerns an urgent matter affecting all faculty. I will send a transport to your location. True to their word, 15 minutes later a hover platform arrived outside Frank's apartment. Too tired to walk, he gratefully boarded the device, which whisked him across campus to the central faculty hall. The meeting space was designed to accommodate faculty of all morphologies, with various seating arrangements, atmospheric bubbles, and gravity fields. Frank found a human-appropriate chair and sank into it, noticing he was the only one who appeared physically tired. Dean Vorex materialized at the center of the room. Faculty colleagues, we face an unprecedented situation. The Galactic Academic Accreditation Committee has moved up their inspection visit to tomorrow. A wave of reactions swept through the room, flashing colors, pheromone releases, electromagnetic pulses, and audible exclamations. This is highly irregular, protested Professor Z. Lorne. We require at minimum one full cycle to prepare proper demonstrations. Nevertheless, they arrive tomorrow, the dean replied. All faculty must prepare exemplary sessions. Teaching assistants will be required to participate in multiple demonstrations. Frank felt his heart sink. If today had been exhausting, tomorrow promised to be far worse. After the meeting, Tren approached him. Human Foster, you appear to be operating below optimal parameters. I'm exhausted, Frank admitted. One day in, and I'm not sure I can handle tomorrow if it's going to be more intense than today. Tren's 4 hands made rapid gestures that the translator didn't catch. This is concerning. Follow me immediately. Too tired to argue, Frank followed Tren to the university's medical facility, a vast complex with chambers designed for every conceivable life form. They were met by Dr. Plex, a holographic being projected from a hovering medical unit. Human subject shows signs of physical depletion, Tren explained. Accreditation inspection tomorrow requires peak performance. Dr. Plex scanned Frank with invisible beams. Diagnosis: mild rhabdomyolysis, electrolyte imbalance, glycogen depletion, and elevated cortisol. Treatment protocol indicated. Before Frank could protest, he was guided to a chamber filled with bluish fluid. Please remove outer coverings and immerse, instructed Dr. Plex. You want me to get into that? Frank eyed the strange liquid dubiously. Rapid cellular regeneration bath, the doctor explained. Standard procedure for biological entities experiencing tissue microdamage. Too exhausted to argue, Frank stripped down to his underwear and cautiously entered the bath. The liquid was warm and tingled against his skin. Almost immediately, he felt the soreness in his muscles begin to subside. "Remarkable," he murmured as the fatigue that had been weighing him down started to lift. "Cellular repair accelerated by 400%, observed Dr. Plex. "Human physiology responds well to treatment." After 20 minutes in the bath, Frank felt completely rejuvenated, better than he had in years, in fact. He emerged from the liquid to find it had somehow left both him and his underwear completely dry. "That's amazing," he said, flexing his previously sore muscles. "We need this technology on Earth. The components would be prohibitively expensive on your planet," Tren informed him. "However, we have installed a scaled-down version in your dormitory complex as requested by Dean Vorex." Frank dressed quickly. "So I'm good to go for tomorrow." "Physical parameters restored to 97% of optimal," confirmed Dr. Plex. "Recommend 9 hours of consciousness suspension and nutritional supplementation for complete recovery." Tren escorted Frank back to his apartment, where he found his small kitchen stocked with additional human-compatible food packs. "Rest well, human Foster. Tomorrow will be most demanding." True to prediction, Frank slept soundly and woke feeling surprisingly refreshed. The benefits of the regeneration bath had apparently lasted through the night. His muscles, which should have been screaming in protest, felt limber and ready for action. He barely had time for breakfast before his communication device chimed with an updated schedule. His heart sank as he reviewed it. He was expected to participate in 8 different demonstrations across 6 departments, with barely any breaks between. "They're really trying to kill me," he muttered as he headed out to meet his fate. The first session was with Professor Zelorn again, but this time with the addition of 3 stern-looking beings that Frank's translator identified as accreditation committee members. They watched impassively as Frank repeated yesterday's physical demonstrations, this time with even more sensors attached to his body. The human teaching assistant demonstrates typical physiological responses for his species, Professor Zelorn explained to the committee. "Note the efficiency of bipedal locomotion despite its apparent evolutionary disadvantages." Frank ran, jumped, climbed, and lifted weights, while the committee members took notes on devices that seemed to float in the air before them. Despite his restored energy, by the end of the session, he was beginning to feel the strain again. No sooner had he finished than Tren appeared to rush him to his next appointment, a demonstration of human cognitive function under stress in the psychology department. This involved solving increasingly complex puzzles while subjected to various sensory distractions. "Human problem-solving relies heavily on pattern recognition," explained Professor Mindrel, "a being composed entirely of neural tissue suspended in a hovering containment field." Teaching assistant Foster will now demonstrate how emotional stimuli affect decision-making processes. What followed was an hour of psychological torture, as Frank was shown images designed to provoke emotional responses while trying to complete mathematical equations. The committee members seemed particularly interested in how his heart rate and brain activity changed in response to pictures of Earth, human families, and natural disasters. By midday, Frank had also demonstrated human immune responses in the medical department, which involved being exposed to harmless but irritating allergens. Human artistic expression in the arts faculty, where he had to sing, dance, and draw to increasingly skeptical observers, and human nutritional requirements in the biochemistry division, where he had to consume various foods while his digestive processes were monitored in disturbingly intimate detail. "You are performing admirably," Tren assured him during a brief break. "The committee appears impressed with your versatility." "I feel like a circus animal," Frank complained, gulping water. "Is this really necessary for accreditation?" "The committee rarely has access to new species representatives," Tren explained. "Your presence offers unique research opportunities." Before Frank could protest further, he was whisked away to the physical education department, where he faced his most challenging test, yet a comprehensive assessment of human athletic capabilities. "The subject will now demonstrate maximum aerobic capacity," announced the department head, a muscular being with 6 limbs and leathery skin, followed by anaerobic threshold evaluation and flexibility assessment. What followed was essentially a complete physical fitness test that would have challenged an Olympic athlete. Frank ran on treadmills, pedaled stationary bikes, swam in a zero-gravity pool, lifted weights, and contorted his body into positions that tested the limits of human flexibility. By the end, he was drenched in sweat, his muscles trembling with fatigue. As he stumbled off the final apparatus, several alien students who had been observing approached him with concerned expressions, or their species equivalent. "Human Foster exhibits signs of imminent systemic failure," one observed to another. "Collapse appears probable within minutes." "I heard humans require specialized recovery facilities," added another. "Is there a gymnasium nearby?" Frank, bent over with hands on knees, looked up in confusion. "Why do you all keep asking if I need a gym? That would just mean more exercise." The students conferred among themselves before one stepped forward. "Our research indicates humans utilize gymnasiums to repair physical damage. Is this incorrect?" Despite his exhaustion, Frank laughed. "We use gyms to get stronger by stressing our muscles, not to recover from stress. Right now, I need rest, food, and maybe another dip in that regeneration bath." This seemed to perplex the students further. "Your species deliberately induces micro-damage to strengthen systems. This contradicts conventional biological principles." "Welcome to human physiology," Frank replied with a tired smile. "We're full of contradictions." The accreditation committee members who had been observing silently made notes on their devices. "Human adaptive strategies merit further study," one commented to another. "Their counterintuitive approach to physical development may have applications for other species." Frank was finally allowed a brief respite in the faculty lounge, where he collapsed into a chair and consumed 3 nutrition packets in rapid succession. His relief was short-lived, however, as Tren soon appeared with yet another update. Final demonstration in 30 minutes. The committee specifically requested a comprehensive cultural exchange session. Frank groaned. "What does that entail?" "You will interact with representatives from 12 different species simultaneously, demonstrating human social adaptability." The final session proved to be the most challenging yet, as Frank had to navigate a complex web of alien social customs, taboos, and communication styles. What might be a friendly gesture to one species could be a grave insult to another, and he had to constantly adapt his behavior while explaining human social norms. On Earth, direct eye contact can indicate attentiveness, but in some cultures, it can be seen as aggressive or disrespectful. He explained to a group that included beings with everywhere from 0 to 12 eyes. "And physical touch has significant cultural variations," he continued, demonstrating handshakes, bows, and other greeting rituals. "The same gesture can mean different things depending on context." By the time the session ended, Frank was mentally exhausted as well as physically drained. He sat heavily in a chair as the committee members conferred among themselves. Finally, one approached to being composed of what appeared to be liquid mercury contained within a force field. "Human Foster, your demonstrations have been most illuminating. The committee has reached a decision regarding Galactic University's accreditation status." The room fell silent as faculty from across departments gathered to hear the verdict. "Based on our observations, particularly the innovative xenobiological program and cross-species teaching methodologies demonstrated today, we are pleased to extend Galactic University's accreditation for another full cycle." A wave of relief swept through the assembled faculty, manifesting in various species-specific expressions of joy. "Furthermore," the committee member continued, "we wish to highlight the human exchange program as exemplary. Teaching Assistant Foster's participation has provided valuable insights into a species previously underrepresented in galactic academia." Dean Vorex's particle cloud formed what Frank had learned to recognize as an expression of pride. "We thank the committee for their thorough evaluation and welcome this recognition of our institution's commitment to diverse educational practices." As the formal proceedings concluded, Frank found himself surrounded by faculty and students offering their species equivalent of congratulations. Professor Zelorn approached, eyes rotating with excitement. "Human Foster, your performance exceeded all predictive models. The Xenobiology Department has received additional funding for human-centric research based on today's demonstrations." "Glad I could help," Frank replied, trying not to show how completely drained he felt. Tren appeared at his side. "Medical scans indicate you are approaching critical fatigue thresholds. Dr. Plex has prescribed immediate regenerative therapy." Too exhausted to argue, Frank allowed himself to be escorted back to the medical facility, where the regeneration bath awaited. As he sank into the bluish fluid, he felt the now familiar tingling sensation as his overworked muscles began to repair themselves. "Human physiology remains puzzling," Dr. Plex observed as the monitoring equipment tracked Frank's recovery. "Your species pushes biological systems to failure points regularly, yet recovers with remarkable efficiency." "It's how we're built," Frank murmured, feeling strength returning to his limbs. "We get stronger by facing challenges." After an hour in the bath, Frank emerged feeling significantly better, though not completely restored. Dr. Plex prescribed a full night's rest and provided additional nutritional supplements designed to accelerate recovery. Back in his apartment, Frank was surprised to find several alien students waiting outside his door. He recognized them from various classes he'd assisted with throughout the day. "Human Foster," one began, a floating crystalline being similar to Professor Nixil but smaller. "We have been researching human recovery protocols and have reached a conclusion." "Oh," Frank raised an eyebrow. "You require a gymnasium to maintain optimal function," stated another student, the insectoid one from Professor Zelorn's class. "We have created one for you." They led Frank to a nearby room that had been completely transformed. Exercise equipment specifically designed for human physiology filled the space weights, cardio machines, stretching areas, and even what appeared to be a small swimming pool. "This is amazing," Frank said, genuinely touched by their effort. "But I'm not sure I explained clearly. Gyms are for getting stronger, not for immediate recovery. Right now, I need rest more than exercise." The students looked at each other in confusion. "But our research indicates humans regularly visit these facilities after periods of stress." "Yes, but not immediately after exhaustion," Frank explained gently. We use gyms to build strength over time so we can handle future challenges better. Understanding dawned in various alien expressions. A preventative rather than reactive approach, mused one student. Fascinating adaptation strategy. We have much to learn about human physiology, admitted another. Your species' contradictory responses challenge our fundamental assumptions about biological systems. Frank smiled. That's what makes cross-species exchange valuable. We all have something to teach each other. The students seemed pleased with this response. Before leaving, they presented Frank with one final gift, a data device containing information about all their species' recovery methods, adapted for human physiology where possible. For optimal functioning in the galactic academic environment, explained the insectoid student. We wish your tenure at Galactic University to be both productive and sustainable. After they left, Frank examined the device, finding detailed instructions for various alien relaxation techniques, nutrition plans, and even sleep optimization methods. It was a thoughtful gesture that reflected genuine concern for his well-being. In the days that followed, Frank settled into a more manageable routine at the university. The administration, having learned from the accreditation demonstrations, adjusted his schedule to better accommodate human endurance limits. He continued to assist in various departments, but with reasonable recovery periods built in. The custom gym became a popular gathering place not just for Frank, but for students interested in human exercise methodology. He found himself teaching impromptu classes on weightlifting, cardio training, and the concept of personal bests to increasingly enthusiastic alien students. Your species' approach to physical development has applications for many of us, Professor Zelorn noted during one such session. The deliberate stress recovery cycle appears effective across multiple physiologies when properly adapted. Frank's experiences led to the establishment of a new course at Galactic University, Comparative Physical Optimization Across Species. As the first instructor, he helped students understand how different beings approached the universal challenge of maintaining and improving physical function. By the end of his first semester, Frank had not only adjusted to life at Galactic University, but had made a significant contribution to interspecies understanding. His initial exhaustion had given way to a deeper appreciation for the diversity of life in the galaxy, and the unique perspective humans could offer. During the end-of-term faculty gathering, Dean Vorex's particle cloud formed what Frank now recognized as their version of a smile. Teaching Assistant Foster, the Human Exchange Program has exceeded expectations because of your contributions. We would like to offer you an extended position. Frank looked around at the beings who had become his colleagues and friends. I'd be honored to stay longer. There's still so much we can learn from each other. Indeed, agreed Professor Zelorn, though perhaps with a more reasonable demonstration schedule in the future. As laughter in various forms rippled through the gathering, Frank reflected on how far he'd come from that first exhausting day. The question about needing a gym born from a fundamental misunderstanding of human physiology had led to greater insight for everyone involved. In the complex tapestry of galactic academia, it was often the small misunderstandings that led to the most profound connections. And Frank Foster, the tired human who didn't collapse when expected to, had found his place among the stars.